scripture lesson this morning is found in the book of Jonah. And as I shared with the children, this is a story that many of us are familiar with. And the main thing we know about Jonah is that he was swallowed by a fish, or we usually make it a whale. But the story of Jonah is a lot more. There's a lot more to it than that, and we're going to just hear now the tail end of what happens. This passage that we're going to read takes place right after Jonah has been, as I said with the kids, burped up onto the shores of Nineveh, and finally decides he really should do what God asks him to do. We're going to read the third chapter, verses 1 through 5 and 10. Once again, the Lord spoke to Jonah. He said, "Go to Nineveh, that great city, and to proclaim to the people the message I have given you." So Jonah obeyed the Lord and went to Nineveh, a city so large that it took 3 days to walk through it. Jonah started through the city, and after walking a whole day, he proclaimed, in 40 days, Nineveh will be destroyed. The people of Nineveh believed God's message, so they decided that everyone should fast, and all the people, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth to show that they had repented. God saw what they did. He saw that they had given up their wicked behavior. So he changed his mind and did not punish them as he had said he would. May God add a blessing to the reading and the hearing of the word. Well, when I was about to go into 10th grade, I had an experience that is probably most high school students' nightmare. My family faced the very real prospect of moving to another city. My father had found himself out of work and was looking for a new job, and one of the opportunities that came his way was in Philadelphia. And if he had taken that, of course, we would have had to move from Chicago to Philadelphia. And at that point in my life, the concept of leaving my friends and all that I knew in Chicago was just, I couldn't even face it. I begged my father not to take this job. And when he made it clear to me that he was going to make what he felt was the best decision for our family as a whole, which might mean that he would indeed take this offer in Philadelphia, well, then I switched my tactics. I said, "Well, Dad, then why don't you just let me stay here? I'll stay with some friends for my last 2 years. Because you don't want me to go with you there. I'll be miserable for the whole 2 years." Now, my father eventually did find a job in the Chicago area, and we wound up not having to move. But while that prospect of moving was still alive, I spent a lot of time whining to my friends about that particular. Of course, we whined a lot in those days with each other, like teenagers tend to. But that was most of my whining was on about with my friends. And one of them one day said something that I hadn't thought about. They said, "Not that I want you to move, but maybe you're supposed to go to Philadelphia. Maybe something really great is going to happen to you when you get there. Maybe it's just meant to be." And while I was generally opposed to the idea of moving at all, I must admit that these friends' words were something I'd never thought about. And it strangely comforted me to think, well, that even if I did wind up having to move, maybe it would all be for the best. We hear those sorts of things all the time, don't we, from folks? And we say them to ourselves, don't we? We say things like, things happen for for a reason. When God closes a door, he opens a window. You were meant for each other. And on it goes. And while, as I say, those can be comforting, and I'm not saying one should never think those things, let's think about what we're saying when we say those things. Because when we do so, we are saying that there is there's a presumption in these statements that we go through our lives, we are on some sort of pre-designed track that has been laid out ahead of us, way ahead of time by God, and that God has our lives all mapped out well in advance. You've heard this sort of thing before, haven't you? Maybe you thought it. Oh, we aren't supposed to meet this person, or I was supposed to take this job, or I was supposed to do all that. We have this sense that there is this sort of what you might call fate that we are destined to fulfill. And like I said, in some ways, that sort of thing is somewhat comforting. But on the other hand, if we really think about it, it's also pretty discomforting to think that our lives are all mapped out for us. Because it presents, I should say, a view of our lives that indicates that even as we go along thinking that we are making choices, thinking that we have some opportunities to weigh and to consider and to choose, thinking we actually have some responsibility and some ability to change our situation, well, it's not really true. We don't really have choices. What's going to happen is going to happen. And if that's the case, in reality, you and I are nothing more than little pawns, little pieces being moved around on a game board. So this morning I want to ask us to think about this question. Do we make choices? Do we have options? Or is it all set up in advance in such a way that we don't really have the choices we think we have? And in order to play with this question, we're going to meet a fellow that we just read a moment ago about by the name of Jonah. Now, Jonah is one of the more colorful characters of the Bible, and many of us have some familiarity with him, as we said before with the kids. The main thing we know about him is that he was swallowed by the fish, and that's not something that happens every day, right? And so, of course, we know something a little bit about him, but that's only a part of Jonah's story. You see, Jonah is a prophet. And God has called him to deliver a message of warning to the people of Nineveh. Now, let's step back for a minute and ask ourselves, what does it mean to say that Jonah is a prophet? Because the Bible is full of all sorts of prophets, right? There's a section of the Bible that is referred to as the prophets, and we run into prophets all over the place in the Scriptures. And so we need to ask ourselves, well, what does the word prophet mean in biblical terms? Now, I think most folks, if you ask them what a prophet was, they would tell you that a prophet is someone who can tell the future. They see things that the rest of us don't see. They're sort of like psychics. They can tell us what we can expect to have happen in our lives ahead of time. Some of us have come up with elaborate theories about how they're telling us what was going to happen to the world as a whole. And thousands of years ago, there was folks telling us that things that are going to be happening now or sometime into the future. And some of the same folks say, well, okay, and then there's things that we can see happening now that are fulfillments of these biblical prophecies from way back when. And they get very specific about this. And they'll get on television and name specific situations and talk about specific leaders. And they've been doing this for years, right? Hundreds and hundreds of years. And always finding things that they think are fulfillments of what the prophet said was going to happen, written all those many years ago. And Jonah's message, for example, seems to do that. It's pretty simple and straightforward. In 40 days, Nineveh will be destroyed. Open and shut, right? Might as well get your affairs in order. Might as well work on your bucket list. Might as well spend time with your family and children, because in 40 days, it's going to happen, right? Now, if you know the story of Jonah, you know that it takes him quite some time to actually bring this message to the people of Nineveh. Nineveh was one of Israel's bitterest enemies, and Jonah didn't want to have anything to do with them, let alone to go to them with a word of warning of their impending doom. He would have just as soon seen them fry without any warning whatsoever. And so he runs in the opposite direction, and that's where the big fish comes in. When Jonah is running in the opposite direction, he boards a ship as part of his running away, and while he's on the ship, he gets thrown overboard and swallowed by the big fish, who then takes him for a ride and deposits him on the shores of the city of Nineveh. And all of this would seem to support the contention that God has laid out plans for us, so that even when Jonah heads in the opposite direction from where God wants to be, God finds a way to make him fulfill his destiny anyway. But something amazing happens after Jonah finally delivers his message to the people of Nineveh. The leaders of the city respond to Jonah's preaching by issuing a decree. We read in Jonah 3:8 that the leaders issue a decree that all of the inhabitants of the city, even the animals, are supposed to wear sackcloth, and all of the inhabitants are to pray earnestly to God and give up their wicked behavior and their evil actions. And that in itself is pretty amazing. It doesn't happen every day, right? But then see what else happens. In verse 10, here's God's response. We see that God saw what they did. He saw that they had given up their wicked behavior, so he changed his mind and did not punish them as he said he would. Now, if this were the sort of church where all of our members brought their Bibles with them to worship and took notes, I would be saying to you to underline these 4 words from our scripture lesson. God changed his mind. Think about that for a moment. God changed his mind. And so what seems like the prophet's prediction of God's predetermined, unavoidable, inevitable judgment turns out to be something quite different after all. In other words, the map can change. The track that we are traveling on is not set in stone. We are not fated, nor is the world fated. The future, or the current direction the future seems to be taking, is not inevitable, but rather is open. God wants us to exercise our free will in the hopes that, just like the Ninevites, we will make good decisions that will save ourselves from negative consequences. Some of us perhaps are familiar with the Back to the Future movies. Wonderful movies, very clever and well done. In these movies, the heroes are sent back and forth through time, trying to change the course of events that have already happened or that they will anticipate will happen in the future. Looking at their present life situations, if they determine that something that is about bad that's about to happen, if they can change it in some way by going into the past, or if they see something that they see is bound to happen, but they need to go into the future to make sure it doesn't happen, that's what they do, right? And so, for example, if they see someone who is married to someone they shouldn't be married, and it's a bad marriage or whatever, they will go back into the future, or into the past rather, and make sure that they meet somebody else who is going to be better for them. And one of the really clever things that they do in these movies is that they show, in some cases, the newspaper headlines magically changing to reflect the newly altered reality that they've been able to accomplish by going back or forward into time. Even sometimes tombstones, the date of someone's death is erased because they've been able to change something. And while we can't go backwards or forwards to change things, it turns out that that same sort of notion is also what we find in much of biblical prophecy. That biblical prophecy presents the headlines of what will happen if we don't change, but allows for the rewriting of our own personal history as well as the history of the world. From that perspective, prophecy is seen as a warning rather than as a prediction of doom, hopeful rather than discouraging, empowering rather than disempowering, redemptive rather than punitive, an expression of God's desiring that none should perish rather than God purposely shoveling people into destruction and hell. Now, I know we have been taught to believe in an omni-God, right? Remember all the omnis that are associated with God: omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, a God who never changes, his mind who decrees and it happens. And it is true that God is all those things. But if God is omnipotent, if God is all-powerful, perhaps one of God's power is to voluntarily choose to not know about future contingencies. And if that is the case, then the good news is that you and I are not robots doomed to follow the path laid out before us. You and I are not victims who are powerless to change the unfolding forces and patterns of time. And the world has a future even when it seems to be doomed. Friends, what are some headlines in your life that you would like to change? I was thinking of some headlines that might go along with even some of what Susan shared with us a little bit ago. Maybe things like drug addict on the inevitable path toward death. Or parents addict succumb to enabling and despair. Or man stuck in dead end life. Or woman locked in bitterness and unforgiveness. Well, due to my limited PowerPoint skills, I was trying to have those change just like they do in the Back to the Future movies, and it didn't work. But imagine those headlines for your life changing. Oh, it did work. Drug addict on road to recovery. Parents addict reach out for support with God's help. Man takes risks to build new life. Woman forgives and lets go. Or imagine some headlines for the world that we read now and then these days. Earth headed for environmental catastrophe. Racism is alive and well in the U.S. 21,000 children die